Could you have ever imagined being involved in NIL the way you are?
No, not at all.
At what point did this become a thing? Did you have a light bulb moment?
Yeah, I think I've had a few where the dots connect, and as an entrepreneur, as a business person, kind of a marketer, sometimes you go into something you don't know how to work, but when you make that gamble or that guess, or you push the chips in, and over a period of months, you see it all culminate together. So Kim's probably the best example, right? I've tried it with several things, but she comes to town, I meet with her, immediately I connect, like her brand, her style, her belief system. It's all right, I want to be a part of this because you're going to win, and I want to be on the ground floor, first to the door, and I think this would be good for my business. And then to watch it unfold and culminate as quickly as it did, there were some light bulb moments where I kind of raised a glass with my wife and go, that was fun. That was fun to actually, it's like whether you're in sports, you're designing a play that you think, we do this early in the first quarter, we'll get them on this late in the game. You set them up, right? We see it all the time down in football and basketball. It was kind of that. I saw it in my mind, and it worked out, and it was driving her in the parade and all that happening was like, yeah.
So many people have, I think, people who live in the Baton Rouge community, or even just in the state, they've seen your commercials, they've seen you on billboards, and certainly NIL has exposed a new version of you, for lack of a better phrase. Can we go back, though? Mm-hmm. I want to go back and do the origin story to then get us up to present day.
Sure.
So if I say, okay, who are you? Where did you come from? Like, give me the go back. Yeah. Who is Gordon? Where did you come from?
So born and raised here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My father came to Baton Rouge on an LSU basketball scholarship. A lot of people didn't know that. He played at Miami High. Thompson, the great Laker, who was the all-time leading scorer, and
Michael Thompson.
Yeah, until he broke that record. So he was a really good athlete. Came up here, and so that kind of brought our family here, so to speak. And I was just raised in a home of LSU sports and athletics and competition. And my dad was very much into that, into every day testing yourself, competing against yourself. How can we make it more adverse or tougher in whatever you're going to do? So that mindset's kind of always been in me. And I was a good athlete. I wouldn't say I was a great athlete, but as a child, had some different challenges that I had to overcome from some different things that put a little piss and vinegar in me, a little fire in the belly. When you're not picked first or second, or you picked last in elementary school sports activities, because I had some eye issues that I had bad depth perception. And
so you were the last kid standing on the wall waiting to be picked.
It's a true story, let me tell you. And I can remember in a third grade little event, I was the last one picked, but the teams were even. So let's say there was 13 of us. It was supposed to be a 6-6 team, and I was 13. I was the 13th, and neither one would take me, and they ended up fighting over who would not take me. And it was largely due to my eye issue that I had several surgeries on young, that I couldn't pick up depth of a ball coming towards me. So I might strike out or miss it and kick ball. But I was pretty fast and a good athlete, but boy, I was driven. Let me tell you what, when you're 13th and nobody wants you, you get motivated. So just kind of always had that, and born and raised, went to U High and met my high school sweetheart there, and went to LSU and been a part of the community and raised my family here, and love this community.
You have like great LSU memories. Like when I say, what do you remember? Like your fondest memories, kid, or watching LSU athletics?
Yeah. So jumping to basketball real quick, watching the first kind of big Dale Brown with Dwayne Scales and Rudy Macklin and that Howard Carter and that whole crew. My dad actually was Howard's agent when he went to the pros, so I was involved in that and watching that whole era unfold. And that was a wild era. That was interesting times. The way that things went on under the table and over the table back in that day, it was just a little different going into the locker room after a game. And I had access to that because of my father. And then going into the 80s and watching, Shaquille and the two towers arrive, and then watching Chris Jackson and that was different. When he showed up, and what he could do with a basketball and the 50-point games. Those were very fond basketball memories, kind of those three. And then if you jump to football, beating Florida, that back in the late 90s, that was a big deal. My good friend Jamie Howard, that's a bad memory that stays in there. Love him to death. We don't talk about it often, but the interception game
against Auburn in '94.
Yeah, you kind of remember where you were, right?
Yeah.
Where
in
the Birdcage Lounge in Grand Hotel at Point Clear, Alabama, and watching that unfold. Me and my dad, and just the misery that we lived through for that one, right?
You know what I tell Jamie though is that people always remember the interception game in '94. For those who don't know, LSU was up big on Auburn on the road, and I think it was 4 pick sixes.
Right. But we kept throwing.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, move on. Yeah.
But 95 was bring back the magic against Auburn.
That's right.
Yeah, which was 12-6, which is one of the great wins in Tiger Stadium history over top 10 Auburn. Yeah. And I remember that one way more fondly than we were trying to think about 94.
Yeah, the earthquake game, obviously. One of the years when we were early on throwing the oranges on the field when we were going the Orange Bowl.
Florida
Back
State.
then, it used to mean something. Another big one was my sister dated Benji Thibodeau, who was a defensive lineman. We're playing USC and lost 17-12 on the brush of the face mask.
1979.
So Benji comes to our house afterwards, and he is a broken man because he's just cost us the victory against USC, and he's blaming himself. And that was an interesting night to watch a grown man. He's all SEC and got drafted. But just to be broken like that, that was so,
that's pretty fascinating. Like, we could probably do a whole episode just on that game too. That whole
Charles White was a running back, and
Marcus Allen. Anthony Munoz, Ronnie Lott. That was a great,
pretty good team.
Yeah, really good team.
So whenever I'm glad you transitioned into LSU memories, because I've always wondered what somebody who witnessed that, and so you had behind the scenes access, right? What would NIL have been like back in the days of Ethan Martin and Howard Carter and Dwayne Scales? And by the way, some super cool nicknames for those guys back then that probably had double meanings, but nonetheless, but anyhow, what do you think it would have been like back then? All the way up through probably Shaq and Chris Jackson.
Yeah, they may have taken a pay cut. I'd have to think about it.
Wait, I'm curious, Counselor. The statute of limitations, which seemed to have expired. You were talking about some stuff in the early '80s. I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit.
It would have been. There were some huge personalities then. I mean, just bigger than life personalities, and the way they just lived their lives. I think it would have been a lot of fun to have those guys out there moving services and products for people. They would have done it really, really well. They were a fun group of guys. Especially think about Shaq. Shaq is doing something in NIL in the mid '80s. What that would have been like? It'd have been over the top. Yeah.
You real quick. You mentioned your dad was an agent. Give me the backstory though of how you became an attorney.
Right.
Was that always your plan, your dream, your goal?
I think it was somewhere in there. You've got to flirt with other things, and I worked for some doctors in college, so I was kind of thinking pre-med for a little while. But just having grown up in the business, so to speak, with my dad, he had a much smaller practice, a handful of lawyers, but was very, very successful and very good at it. Just being exposed to it and watching him and prepare for trials and things like that always intrigued me. So it didn't take me long to right the ship towards being a lawyer in college. So yeah, it was just a tremendous influence on me watching him.
Did you always, did you know what type of law you wanted to practice?
Well, the only one I exposed to my dad was an injury lawyer, right? So I knew that. I knew he represented people, as he would say, who couldn't represent themselves. They didn't have the means to step up into a court of law and get it that far. They don't have the money. I mean, it costs money to get there. And so he always kind of sided with that type of humanity, right? The people who are less fortunate, who can't do those things. So that was really all I knew.
Is there I'm just kind of set, because I want people to kind of know you a little bit, then we're going to talk a lot about the NIL space, but is there a point definitively where, talking about light bulb moments a bit ago, but where you decided you were going to go so heavy into marketing your practice?
Yeah, there was a point. It was around 2007 or so, and I've told this story to a few people, but I received a call from a former client And she said, like, I've been in an accident, and I'd like you to represent me. You helped me a few years back, did a great job. And I said, well, wonderful, happy to help you. Tell me about it. And then she goes, well, I hired this other attorney here in town. And I'm like, what do you mean you hired another attorney? When the accident happened, 6-9 months ago, but that attorney's not doing a good job. They're not talking to me and those type things. I'm like, well, hold on. Didn't I do a really good job? Oh, you did a great job. Did everything well. So, well, why'd you hire this other attorney? Well, because I was sitting there injured after the accident, and he came on TV. I'm like, what? Yeah, he came on TV. So the number popped up, so I called that number. I said, but we did a great job for you. Yeah, you did, but it just kind of came up, and so I called it. And literally, I walked out of my office into my father's office, and at this time, he's mid to late 60s, kind of passing to a different point of his life. And I said, like, I got to go a different direction, or we got to go a different direction, because what we're doing is great, but it's not reaching the people like it used to. It used to be word of mouth completely, and you trusted, and you asked your neighbors and friends, and that's how you got a lawyer. But it had evolved, and he was gracious enough to say, well, that's not for me, but you go ahead and start doing it, and I'll support it. And from there, we launched in 2007 or 8, somewhere in there, about 15 years now, and then it's grown to this.
So at the beginning, whenever you decided to go heavy into the marketing space, and I'm going to transition into the NIL world as well, but how much of it at the beginning was, let's just throw mud against the wall and see what sticks, versus actual strategy?
It was probably a little bit of both. And a funny little story, the very first week of advertising, I got a call from a lady, and she said, like, I've been hit by a truck or a bus or something, and I want to hire you. So, oh, great. We've been on TV 1 week, and it's a big case. I mean, she's in the hospital, multiple broken bones. And I said, well, great. Well, why'd you decide to hire me? And she goes, oh, I just flipped a coin between you and Morris Bart. I hired you. And so I was like, wow, well, this is pretty easy, right? And the very first week, I knew I had a case in my inventory that was going to pay for my year's worth of advertising. Wow. And I'm like, oh, this is easy. We're going to keep doing this. And it took a lot longer than I thought, because that was just a blip. Didn't happen like that every week. It took a while to build it and then just keep building it. But at first, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just throwing it against the wall. And then from there, I've learned strategies.
So from there, okay, so obviously you've become an expert in the marketing field. When you decided to get involved in the NIL space, did you see similarities right out the gate? It's like, okay, we've done things like this before, or was it a whole new world to you?
It's one of those things that it's hard to define. I just know there was an opportunity if you're first to market, right? I kind of believe in that. I read a decent amount of marketing books and business books, but first to market's a big thing, right? And so I'm watching it develop, and kind of on the sidelines and saying, well, is anybody else going to do this? And not only no other lawyers were doing it, but really no other businesses were doing it. And I'm like,
you're talking about in Baton Rouge, around
Baton
LSU.
Rouge, around all this this is our largest market, that we're in. So I was like, wow, everybody's on the sidelines. No one knows what to do. But I know if I can get there, first to market, it's going to be great. And so that was kind of the strategy, being first to market, and then just jumping in the pool and going, all right, I'm going to do it. And I also try to do things that are against the grain, right? Whether it's investing or marketing. If you can do something that everybody else is not doing, you stand out above the clutter and the noise. So I'm going to go to a women's basketball player, right? Then happened to be I'd met with Kim a few months earlier and kind of got interested in her program. So why not women's basketball, get people scratching? Why is he doing that? A whole different segment. And from there, it just blew up.
Was that the first NIL deal that you did?
Lexus Morris, early December of whatever that was, 2021, I guess.
Yep. So December. So NIL went live in July of 2021.
Right.
At this point, your law firm has been advertising 15 years. Yeah. And for those who are not in our market listening to the podcast, like, you can't, like, you have this is very intentional. You have blanketed this market. I mean, there's, if it's billboards, if it's buses, if it's radio, if it's television, I mean, you have marketed a letter.
Right.
You have successfully branded a letter.
Right.
Your office building on the interstate, the big inflatables, the flags. everyone knows it. It's
right.
been brilliant, and I would imagine it's been very expensive as well. So which I do want to talk about as much as you're willing to.
Yeah.
But so you've done all of this wildly successful marketing, branding a letter, and branding yourself. Why first to market is something, but I think every marketer also understands you have to see the opportunity for a return. Mm-hmm. Why was there an appeal or a thought for a return marketing to with a NIL deal with a women's basketball player?
Yeah, I think somewhere in there, there's a combination of factors. There's a love for LSU, right? And I knew this was just the first stop. If I'm going to do women's basketball, eventually it's going to lead me to men's football, right? The great love of so many of us here in this community. So I knew this was just the gateway, the pathway through LSU women's basketball to get there. When I started asking around, I decided I want to do women's basketball, start trying to figure out which player in the Alexis Morris story was an interesting one to me. The kind of the prodigal son, the prodigal daughter, the lost sheep, redemption, all those things as a Christian, right? And having a faith, you begin to immediately understand what redemption and how that factors into our lives. So immediately I was drawn to that. An underdog coming home, trying to redeem herself to her coach, right? And look, I'm worth taking that chance on. That immediately spoke to me. I said, look, I want to be a part of that, right? I want to support that narrative, that story. I thought it was great to do it. And then that also got me access, so to speak, to Coach Mulkey's program, right? She's beginning to watch me, and she'll tell people like, I made you date me for a long time before I signed that contract. She will flat out say that, right? I'd heard about you, but it's a lot of flash out there. I want to make sure you're a man of substance, and I checked you out, and she did. I mean, she put me through the hoops, so to speak. She did not make it easy to sign that line.
So you sign a deal with Alexis Morris.
Mm-hmm.
Was Kayshon Boutte your first football deal?
Yeah, he was my second signing about a month later. Yeah.
Can you walk us through that decision? Because
Sure.
that was okay. The LSU football season ends,
Right.
And there was a lot of conversation about Kayshon kind of being lured legally, illegally. Don't know. All right.
Right.
Like I'm
Yep.
being full disclosure. I don't know. There was conversation that he was looking at maybe transferring to Alabama.
Right.
So where do you come into all of this, the Kayshon thing?
Yeah, we just come through that season. It wasn't the best season. And, we have Kayshon as the projected star player for us that following year. And I think he meant a lot to the team at that time, right? And we're duck hunting in a place we go to with several of my family and several of my attorneys, and it's right before Christmas, and the story is breaking, and I'm starting to reach out to different people and saying, is this true? And you get a bunch of males together with guns and booze, testosterone starts flowing, right? And I start getting poked, and my brother-in-law, Mark Field, Dr. Field, who is the LSU team medical director now,
Mm-hmm.
he took Dr. Bankston's place. He started poking me. Like, someone needs to step up, and he starts, why, you ought to be the guy, and you can't afford it. He's poking me and poking me. And so from that, I just started reaching out, going, all right, someone get me to this guy. Let me talk to Kayshon. Let me see what's going on. Because it was something, Coach Saban, when he was here, was very smart. He said, we're going to build a wall around Louisiana. None of our guys are going to get out. Then we're going to go pick up a few. And for him to now come in and breach that wall and take our best player, it didn't sit well with me. It got very personal very quickly for me that, no, you're not going to do that. We're going to send a message that Louisiana's best aren't for plucking, right? And I have no idea if it was true, but I'm being told that was going on. And so from that point, reach out to Kayshon. We got a meeting with his dad, and we negotiate, and they leveraged me. They certainly did. They were more advanced in their negotiations than I thought they would be in terms of knowing how to put a thumb on something.
So you have to tell the story, because I think pretty soon thereafter you walked into a local restaurant and got a standing ovation.
Yeah.
Just talk us through that, please.
Yeah. So, that was an emotional signing, Kayshon. And, I thought maybe at some point people might appreciate it, but I thought that would be years and many, many signings later. Because look, let's be honest, right? The guy on the billboards, the guy doing all the stuff I do sometimes people may not think well of that guy, right? Just saying, right? They're like, wow, what a, gosh, what does he think about himself? He likes himself a lot, right? Just all those other things. And you put my industry as an injury lawyer, some people don't respect that or like that. So we're not thought of as in good fashion. Maybe we're just above used car salesmen, right? I mean, we're down there. And I thought maybe by doing this, a byproduct, a return might be that there's some goodwill generated for my company, for myself, for my profession. And shortly after that, what Pix is speaking about happened, right? People were very appreciative that someone at least entered the fray to start the NIL going at LSU. And since then, that goodwill, that reception that I get has improved. I mean, I can feel it, and people come up to me at tables now and just say, I want to thank you for doing what you're doing, right? So that's a good thing, business return for my business, right? Just people thinking better of us.
So I'm really glad you brought up that angle, because I've had a lot of business owners ask us at Matchpoint, well, where's our ROI, right? Where is this, that, the other? And then the collective comes into the fray. And okay, well, how do you get ROI from donating to the collective? Speak on the fact, because you just really talked about it, but speak on the fact that, and this is the way I present it, if LSU is good, and I don't think anybody in a room in Baton Rouge or the state would speak against this. If LSU is good in football and other sports, the economy is better.
It is.
People go to church on Sunday. They go to work on Monday. Like everything is better. How have you seen that?
Yeah, I would tell the local business owners that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So that's what you're speaking of. When we're just spending more, right? You win, you go out to a restaurant that night, you're going to buy a little nicer bottle of wine, you're going to order a little bit more food, you're going to shop for better outfits for the next game. It lifts everything, right? So that's great, first thing. But secondly, if you're associated with that through a player or players, and they're saying, oh, your business supports that, I bleed purple and gold, that goodwill does flow to you. And I've seen some businesses, but I would think that more would do it. I don't know why. Still, they're not doing it. It's not as expensive as you think, and it's not as time-consuming as you think. And I would just encourage, align yourselves with stories and players that you like, and align them to your business.
When you did the first deal with Alexis, and then you did the deal with Kayshawn, can you remember having in your mind a roadmap at that point? How many deals do I want to do? How much money do I want to spend quarterly, annually? Like, did you have that then?
No, not really. But my wife would tell you, and my family would tell you that I don't enter something gently, right? I don't just tiptoe. There's a saying that I've lived by for a long time: anything worth doing is worth overdoing, right? Mm-hmm. So I just knew it'd be big. I'm just not going to not go in, right? Whether it's billboards or swag rooms or whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do it to the most, right? To the superlative. So I knew it was going to be a lot, and I didn't count on it being as much as it is. I just knew I'm going to enter the space until someone else does. Mm-hmm. And what happened is largely is no one else would enter the space, right? So now I'm first to market, and I'm kind of only in the market. So from a business standpoint, you're going to stay there as long as you can, right? If no one else is pushing you out, and you're getting goodwill in return, you're going to stay there.
So you said you knew it was going to be big, but this is what I'm trying to work through. So if you don't mind disclosing this,
sure.
In a year, let's say in 2021, how much did your firm have allocated for marketing?
For 2021, so what is that? That was a year post-COVID, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because remember COVID happened, and everybody's marketing budget went from 100% to 10%.
Right.
Literally, we slashed everything.
I'm in radio. I know.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. It all of a sudden slashed, and then so 2021, we're building back our marketing once we see it. But I would imagine in 2021 we were probably going to be right under 20 million. We would have in 2020 COVID year we were projected to be over 20.
Okay, I was going to ask 20. Sometimes like in our industry we'll go 1 year pre-COVID. So we'd look at 19. So 19 you would have been in that range.
19 was probably 18 to 19 million. 20 before COVID hit, it was probably going to be 21, 22. Then we slashed it, and then so back in 21, we built it back to about 20 million. Now we're probably this year will probably be 23, 24 million.
So if you're doing, let's just use a round number and say 20 million.
Right.
You're doing 20 million annually in marketing.
Right.
Okay. That certainly makes you among, if not the biggest marketer in this market.
Right. Yep.
You were on the record at one point saying year one, you spent somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million in NIL deals. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Is that a large number? I mean, well, it's relative.
Yeah,
but to you, is that a large number?
Yeah, that's a large number. I mean, that's a nice chunk of your marketing budget, right? When you think about it, I could go and buy 400 more billboards or 300 more billboards or whatever it be, or this many more TV commercials or this many more paid searches or this much more radio. You're, it's not infinite, the marketing dollars we have, although sometimes my marketing director and I feel like we'll try that. Let's do this. And dang, if most of the stuff we try doesn't work. So I always tell them I don't mind trying anything once in marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's an idea, a program, a project, a new medium, I'll do anything once, literally anything. And NIL was kind of that, right? There was a combination of your love for school and there was a combination of your, let's see what it'll do for our business.
How many, and Pix, you could probably jump in on this as well from the match point side, how many NIL deals have you done to date? And if you do either of you know it?
No,
offhand?
I don't. Because we also branched
a bunch.
out. Yeah, a bunch. We have offices all across the state, right? So if there is another local story in Monroe or in Lafayette or in Lake Charles that appeals to us, we sign players at other universities. So I can't recall, but it's probably 50 plus deals, easy.
Okay.
Probably closer to 70.
So more than 50, fewer than 100.
Right.
So just for context, I mean, it's just trying to paint the picture to give people context. Are you is the plan to continue that $750,000 to $1 million you spent year one? Is the plan to continue adding to that the same way you just described how you continue increasing your marketing budget annually by, if it's, 10%, 20%, whatever it may be?
I would think we'd kind of be in that same area, and Pix can probably talk to this as well. I think that the landscape is changing a little bit with NIL, meaning at first it was just, the dam breaking and everybody rushing to get players and players commanding outrageous amounts and things like that. I sense it in talking to, I deal with Mackenzie a lot with Matchpoint, talking to her. You can sense a little bit of a pullback that maybe some of the outrageousness that was associated with some of these demands in amounts that they were seeking is starting to kind of come down a little bit. Not saying you're still not going to get the Arch Mannings and 5-star quarterbacks when they go to SC or Texas aren't still going to get crazy money, but you do have a sense that things are receding. So I don't think the inflation is going to continue to hit it to the degree it has. And you also have the collectives coming in and being established and supporting it. So I wouldn't think that I would necessarily increase. I think we'll be smarter too. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is definitely a more focused attack we will do. I probably won't sign as many players. I'll go after more quality players. The people who move the needle, so to speak, on the weekends.
It is interesting you bring that up because I think it's twofold. The reasons why it will kind of come back to the fray. Number one, I do believe the federal government is going to get involved because Charlie Baker is begging for it, right? And I think he's got their ear. And the other part is a lot of the numbers that have been thrown out there are false.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not even close. And, you look at what happened at Texas A&M, and, I don't know how much was true, how much wasn't true. But if those numbers were true and you still lost as many kids as they lost, I just don't see that as
it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
That's one of the big questions that I think we have with NIL is a sustainability and how much does the market settle?
Right.
You did also bring up whenever you did the deal with Kayshawn, how you were first to market, how no one was really willing. And it's interesting because at a place like LSU with a big, enormous brand and means so much, it has been slow. It was slow for the collective to get organized and get moving. Do you see merit in contributing to a collective as opposed to doing deals on your own?
Yeah. Well, I do both. I do contribute to the collective. I'm one of the founders of it. I do think it's an important thing. You have to have it, right? If you're going to compete in a Power 5 school, especially the SEC, you better have a collective that is organized and well funded, or you're not going to be competing for long. It's just the way it is now. You have to have it. So my encouragement is to other, supporters of LSU or whichever university you support, is to be involved in your local collective. Will not compete without it. So I do that, but I if you have a business that can, especially a service business or a local small product or retail business, man, you just reach out, do a little bit, get someone on your social media, just something like that. It's easier than you think, and do both of them.
How many, and I know especially at the beginning when it did seem like you were the only one involved,
right,
and kind of were to a degree in this market. How many athletes were reaching out to you asking?
No, a lot. I mean, it's died off some. I still get it every week. I mean, you get one or two, either it's an agent or a handler or the athlete themselves still reaching out. But at first, it was I had to hire a college intern to try to help with all of it and field the inquiries and talk to the players. And we still have we have a little NIL department inside the company now.
And did you, I guess, at a point, did you start to realize, wow, I'm really kind of the only one doing this?
Yeah.
And then did that cause you to start to reach out to other business owners around the area and say, look, in order for us to do this, even though it was great that you were the one, the savior, so to speak. I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I did. And I just think there's just if you're not in advertising largely every day, right, like I am, and the face of the advertising, you go to another local business guy who does some real subtle advertising, but he's not on billboards and all that. It's not as easy for him just to jump in and say, all right, we're going to go advertise and market with this player, right? It's just a slower, more cautious approach. So definitely talk through some owners through that to get them involved to some degree. So that's happening, but I think it has to continue to be pumped out there. And I don't know exactly where TAF and LSU and the collective, what that legality is right now or where it's going to be, but at some point, hopefully it's all meshed together, and the forces behind TAF and LSU can really be pressing on business owners and people to get involved in a bigger degree.
And do you direct those businesses maybe that aren't big advertisers, so to speak, to simply donate to the collective? Is that one way that they can?
Oh yeah, I don't know. They ought to go to BayouTraditions.com and see the website. It's intuitive. It works easily. You can select your different levels, and you can get different customizations of packages and access and to marketing and things like that. Yeah. So I would encourage as many listeners out there, just go look at the website, right? That's a start. There are lots of resources. You can call LSU, you can call Matchpoint, you can do all sorts of things to get in the game. But we have to get in the game. If you love LSU and you're going to support the Tigers by buying season tickets or watching the TV games, you need to equally support the collective.
Another thing that I can't imagine you anticipated happening is you've hired a full-time videographer. Yeah. And we did have Taylor O'Brien as a guest on a previous episode of Rosters to Riches, so I would encourage anybody listening now to go back and listen to that. His story is incredible in and of itself. Yeah. But I reached out to you, I don't know if you remember this, as a radio guy via Twitter DM when the Kayshawn story was happening.
Yep.
I just shot you a DM and you replied. I was like, okay, you replied. You've got over 3,000 Twitter followers now. You've got 16,000 Instagram followers. Do I need to look up TikTok? Or do you know it?
Yeah, and they make me do TikToks. I know that.
Yeah, no, you do.
I don't have any idea how many TikTok followers. I know the Instagram's the one they kind of tell me the most.
8,300 on TikTok with nearly 200,000 likes as well.
Yeah. Is that good or bad?
That's for a personal injury attorney who is not an influencer content creator. Right. You are now an influencer content creator is what you are.
Wow.
Why go? Because you have gone all in on that route,
right?
And not even just with your NIL content, but even your life. There's you and your wife eating breakfast, and you're telling stories, cooking green eggs on St. Patrick's Day and whatnot. Why go all in on that angle as well?
Yeah, a little bit of prodding by my staff, the marketing staff, a little bit by my daughters, Riley and Meredith, who both work for me. Meredith is actually head of my social media. But, we did some TV commercials over the last handful of years. Some people call them the political running for office commercials. There was, "Are you running for governor?" And when I release these commercials and stuff, I'm like, no, it's just, I was told that the public needs to see a different side of me, that I'm just not the guy holding the alligator, standing on top of the truck, that I'm a normal guy. I like normal things. I pray. I go to church. I married my high school sweetheart. So we released those ads, and people took to them. They liked seeing that he's somewhat normal, right? And so this is just kind of an outgrowth of that, since social media and Instagram and TikTok are so personal to our lives, and people are willing to just basically put out there anything. They said, look, you've got to go there. You've got to let people in, because this whole new millennial generation, if you want to reach them, you've got to reach them through these mediums. And so we did it, and came across Taylor, and that's kind of accelerated things, because the videography component is really good. He's just talented with it, and comes up with good ideas. And then we've built out a staff, and now I have an editor, and I've got I call him like a bar back, but he's a guy who just hauls all the stuff everywhere. So it's a whole new department that we're building out, at our company.
So it's interesting you say that, because that is advice that we give to the student athletes. When you're posting things,
Right, yeah.
Don't just make it the sport that you are posting. They want to see what's going on in your personal life. Having dealt with so many of these student athletes, if you had to pick, I don't know, one or two pieces of advice about how to present themselves to where they could take advantage of the NIL space, what would they be?
Right. Well, the first thing would be a big disclaimer, right? You just, whether you want to say, don't post anything that your mother wouldn't approve, or your pastor or somebody like. There needs to be a big caution thing, right? And we see it all the time happening to professional athletes and everybody. Just really think about the what you're putting out there. It's profanities and the don'ts. You don't do the the guns and the drugs and all that stuff. Or look at Flage, who's a wonderful person. I don't know if y'all know her yet, but her song she dropped last week, and it had reference to 9/11 or Twin Towers, and she's talking about their team and their two post players, the Towers, and just got a lot of kickback on that. Just have someone help you with your content, or maybe check it sometimes. That'd be the first big thing, because I hate to see some of these athletes go down a rabbit hole and get sucked down into the gutter, so to speak, on something they shouldn't have done. But as you pointed out, I think there needs to be a nice combination of your, let's call it the professional side, whatever sport you're playing, and then your personal side. You've got to blend that. People just don't want to see you all the time in that role. In fact, what gets the most likes and the most interest is the human side, your human story, your human element. So make sure that's coming out. If you have a big personality, let it show. Don't try to be something you're not, because eventually the trolls are going to figure it out, and they're going to come after you. And you're really not that, you're this. And so be authentic and be personal.
You are, you're not, it's amazing listening to all the, everything going on, because you're far from the guy who back in 2007 was deciding, all right, I want to go run an ad to like, now you have this gigantic operation that's so much more than just law. Are you busier now than you were?
Yeah, I'm probably more busy because I have other outlets, other avenues, other business interests. And it's just not the company, which is now as big as it's ever been, with offices and number of employees and revenue and all that. But then there are more things inside the company, whether it's like this whole social media thing we do now, or it's the NIL, and then you start to take that along with other business interests, whether it's restaurants or other ventures I'm doing. Just there's a lot. I'm busier but I can do it from anywhere. That's the COVID has reorchestrated things for me as a business owner, and how I run things and do things. So it's we're much more efficient. COVID taught us that.
I would imagine with all the different ventures as well, NIL will continue to be a thing that you play in that space. Have you given a thought to what it looks like over the next 12, 24, 36 months, even beyond?
Well, what I hope it comes is I can recede to the background a little bit. I've told people that I look at myself as a bridge from what started or didn't start here at LSU, and we should have, maybe been a little more aggressive earlier, but I got involved. And I hope I'm just a bridge to the next generation, so to speak, the collective, TAF, other people getting involved, and I can pull back. I'll always be there to support it, but I think to really be successful, to battle the roster that Texas is building, to battle USC maybe rising, to battle those schools, you're going to have to be really well funded. And we need more people involved. We need a bigger collective, more prominent collective at LSU to compete long term. You do, because Georgia, Alabama, A&M, Texas, USC, they're well funded.
Good?
Yep. That's it. All right.